Hi, everybody. Welcome to Habitat Now. I'm your host, Aaron Shea, and it is my honor to have artist John Moran, all the way from Belgium, joining us for his Not Grandma's Glass exhibition, which is April. And we're in the very first Saturday of the month, and we're grateful to have him, and it's going to be a very exciting presentation. For those that you don't know, this presentation is a monthly exhibition for the entire month of 2021. We invited 12 artists, each getting their own month, to create their own experience presentation of their own work, exploring what they do and what they believe in. And they are pushing the cutting edge of the glass medium, pushing into the fine arts. And with your help and your support, I'm hoping to get more attention to this kind of program. It is a competition. There are 12 artists, and 4 will be asked to come back next year, voted by a voting system I'm working on. I keep saying I'm working on, but I'm working on to get the who will be in the next year's exhibition. It's going to be quite amazing. So thank you again for joining me. And if you're on YouTube and you've seen these videos, please share them, like them, hit that bell so you're aware of more when these presentations come out. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my screen and just run over to Not Grandma's Glass. So this is the website for Not Grandma's Glass. It's notgrandmasglass.com. And it basically talks about the exhibition, talks about who's in the exhibition, a little bit about it. And then you can see each of the artists' presentations live up on the site. Being the 4th month, we have 4 artists. January being Morgan Peterson, February Matatsuke, March was Michael Janis and Tony Porto, and John Moran. All these exhibitions are up. They're up for the full year, so please check them out. And I'm probably going to keep them on the bottom of the webpage for every year so we can keep going back in time and checking out what's going on. I'm real excited for today, and thank you, John, for participating in this exhibition. Many of you have seen this already. This is our little welcome header for John. Little housekeeping, the entire Kathleen Elliott exhibition is now online on artsy.net. We've spent 6 weeks slowly releasing artwork for her exhibition. It's basically an entire virtual retrospective of her career. So many of her pieces have been on display at museums or on loan. And during the pandemic, she got everything back and we decided to put a show on. We sold a good amount of work from the show, but there's a lot more available. She's an amazing flame worker and an amazing person, so please check it out. Exciting news. Finally, the auction is online. The Mega Masterworks auction is online as of yesterday. The live bidding will be on the 22nd. There's 71 pieces online to bid on. Number 70 is a little bit questionable because I'm trying to fit a piece in for a client. So skip that one until I can get it to work. But definitely check it out. You can check it out on habitatglass.com. It'll take you right there. Glass 49 will be up at the end of the month. This is our exhibition celebrating the artists in the Habitat family. They'll be getting their own presentation. It's our 2nd year doing a virtual exhibition, and we're honored to have you all attend. We'll be doing a preview on April 23rd during the AACG meetup. So if you're an AACG member, you'll be able to see a preview. They always post those online afterwards, which is great. We're trying to get together in person, so plan for around September 11th to have an exhibition celebrating 50 years of Habitat. Details soon. And without further ado, let's welcome John Moran. John, say hello to everybody.
Hey guys, thank you today for joining. I'm pretty excited to show you what I've been up to this past year and to show you some of my past work. I figured it would be a nice way to kind of introduce myself as an artist and then show you the work that I really made for the exhibition. So I'm really thankful to Aaron for putting this together because I really appreciate what he's doing with the idea of trying to bring a new light to artists who are working in I want to say somewhat not like a typical way of working with glass. And I'm really excited to be a part of this. So that's really nice. So basically when Aaron asked me to be a part of the show, I wasn't sure how I was going to do it because most of my work is usually rather large scale and a lot of installation stuff. So I more or less built a gallery in my studio. So I think this is the video that Aaron has here. So I think if we can start it.
Yeah, I will cue it right up right now. So here we make sure so the audio, there's no audio in this video, right? So you're
gonna there's no audio in this video.
Perfect. That's what we'll zip through then.
So the title of the show is Hopeless and Disobey, sorry. And it's a little bit of a play on words, but I wanted to give a little walk through the exhibition so you could see what we did with the space and then talk about some of the individual pieces. This is the first piece in the show. This is called Travelor, and this is part of my Mickey Mori series. So it's a hand sculpted glass skull, and then it's engraved. It's a partnership or a collaboration with my partner Marta Berziak. She did all of the engraving on the piece, and then we made this kind of a globe. And on the globe, there's a lot of imagery. There's a lot of the imagery is misplaced, so it's not. None of the continents are in the same place, in the correct place. And on the one ear is the flat Earth map. I'll explain more about all of the work as later on in the talk, but I want to show each piece individually. This piece is called When We Wish, When You Wish. And it's a wall piece. The head and the hands and the arms are glass, but the body is made from acrylic, fabric, and epoxy resin. So she's actually like looking up to the sky, and the idea of the piece was to play with the perception. I showed this piece for the first time in Denmark in an exhibition there, and people immediately started putting money in her hands, which was not the intention of the piece at all. It was to give people the idea that she was also looking for more or offering something. So in the exhibition, I set up about 16 pieces and the installation. So I'm waiting for it to turn.
It's an incredible space, man. You did a great job setting this exhibition up.
Yeah, it was lucky we had support. I had support from the government here, the Flemish government, for this event. So I was able to build this up for this show, which was really nice. And the first time I've been working with these digital collage pieces, and this is the first time I'm doing prints on glass. So this piece is called Adam and Steve. I'll again refer to these later. But these pieces kind of like are, they support the sculptural work. So the idea behind this show would be as if you would walk into like a kind of a church of consumerism and see everything that's there, and it would give you this feeling of kind of being overwhelmed by this space. So these windows are kind of like fake stained glass windows, but they're digital prints with images taken from museums and then printed together with this pop imagery. Again, this piece here is one of the Mickey Mori series. This piece is called Mirror Mirror, and it's engraved skull on top of an acrylic and gold leafed frame. And the skull has images of Corona all over it. So this piece was really made in the past year. And again, in collaboration with Marta Berziak, she did the engraving. But the idea of the piece is was a reflection on what our past year was like. And that's what started to come from the whole show, was this moments of isolation where we're quite happy to be in a way isolated and spend time alone, but also like really longing for some kind of distraction. And what I'll talk about later in the presentation is that one of the things that I reflected on personally a lot is I'm an American living in Belgium, and my situation here as an immigrant and how that must be, like how that is for me, and not being able to see my family and the group of expats that are here around and how that's affected us. But then also thinking about the people who immigrate in a different way and don't necessarily have the same situation that I had. Just a quick about this piece. This piece was in collaboration with Susan Taylor Glasgow. She came out to my studio in Belgium in 2018, and we did this collaboration together. These, going back to what's in the show right now, this is again one of the pieces I did with Marta, the engraved pieces. These skulls they kind of become surrogates for a kind of a personality, which is in a lot of ways my own like idea of what's happening, or my own like psyche, I guess. And this piece initially started from the border crossing in early February in 2020. I was in the States for a residency at Pittsburgh Glass Center. And there was a guy who was crossing into the States with his child, and they ended up dying in the river. And there was these photos taken of him. And this was the kind of inspiration for this piece. So all of the imagery in that piece is based on immigration. And that piece is about that idea of crossing over. Again, back to the windows. So this part of the talk will be quite quick because it's the walkthrough, but later on I'll go into depth into the images.
But I see these are plugged in. Are they LED lit behind them?
No, in the right now they're lit from the top to bring light into the space, but they will be backlit as well eventually. I just didn't have that didn't have that available yet. I was still working on that part of it. It's my first time ever doing prints on glass, so they're top lit right now.
Gotcha.
This is one of the bigger pieces in the show.
Incredible.
Pray for the Sinners. All of these works are on the site, on the NGG site, but also on my website linked to this, so that you can see them much clearer and better quality. But the idea of this show was that you'd be able to see everything together, so it would create like a space where the different pieces talk to each other. And it's everything about this group of work relates to this the situation that we went through the last year with Corona, but also like reflecting on our kind of individual situations within that. So again, I talked about the idea of immigration. That's one of the like main ideas and concepts that runs throughout the work that I put in for the show. And all of these pieces relate to historical works as well. This piece specifically relates to the Fountain of Apollo, or it's referencing the Fountain of Apollo in Versailles. But it's about like the breaking down of a fairy tale, the breaking down of an idea, something that you believe and something that you think exists, but then finding out that like it's something you have to question all the time. So it was a little bit of like an existentialist thought process throughout this past year of like trying to figure out where I am and where I exist in the world, but then reflecting on that as an individual living in a society, and how that affected me as a person. And when I talk about this very personally, but what I try to do in my work is also reflect on my personal situation and then bring in issues that exist in society. I can go into depth a little bit more of this, or with this in I'll go into depth more of this in the talk, in the presentation, because I have a show of images. And in this, I'll show a lot more of my older work and talk about how those pieces informed what the show is about. And also give a little bit of background about myself and how I build some of these works, but also how I fit into the glass world in a way. Because in a lot of ways, I work with glass as an artist, but also, and as a technician, but also I use it only as one of the materials that I like to work with. So, Aaron, can I start the presentation?
Yep, you can take over the screen right now and share your screen.
Okay.
And make sure you can get a hold of that for sure. We'll see. I'm eager to see this. I'm sure we all are. You see the share screen button in green?
Yes.
Yeah, on your Zoom button.
Got it.
And we can see your first screen.
And can you see it in full screen mode here?
We can see it in full screen mode. Yep. We're looking at a dark screen right now. There's nothing on the screen, just so you know.
Okay, so no.
You see your entire black screen. We see first slide. Or second slide, maybe.
Yes. So I went to I studied glass. I found glass, discovered glass at Tyler School of Art. I was studying under John Clark. And while I was there, I was trying to find my voice as an artist. And when I found glass, it was something really spectacular for me. It was like a material where people work together in the medium. So it wasn't just like being yourself in the studio alone. And that was something very exciting because I came from a background in painting. And after spending so much time by myself in the studio, working in a group as a glass artist was something I was like searching for. I was born in Philadelphia and lived there for most of my life, well, most of my childhood. And when I was 10, I moved to Delaware. When I moved to Delaware, a few months after I moved there, my father died. And that had a big impact on my kind of view of the world at that point, which I was 10 years old. So it was a strange time for me. But my family, my mother and my aunts and uncles were very religious and very Catholic. And they were pushing me to kind of think about the world in a certain way. And during my like high school years, my formative years of growing up, I spent them in Delaware, which was very suburban area. But when I went back to Tyler, I went back to Philadelphia in 1997 and discovered glass in 98. We were living in this kind of suburban area of Philadelphia. And one of the things I really remember about being there was that a lot of the same issues that people talk about being in the city were existing when I lived in the suburbs in Delaware. It wasn't that because I lived in the city, all of a sudden these problems were there and they weren't there in the suburbs. So this was my BFA, my bachelor's show that I'm showing you the images of now, that was about this idea, the fact that like these problems that exist, like gun violence, robbery, violence in general, that exist in the city existed in the suburbs. And it wasn't that there was this myth of like getting away from this. That wasn't kind of the truth. So these were the first piece that I really started to explore my kind of social critique as an artist and develop really in my expression. So these guys are glass, but they're about 3 feet tall actually, but they're pretty simple in their technical, like the way of making them, but they're spray painted glass glued together and then covered in fabric and then built into this installation. So you'll see that becomes kind of a motif throughout my work. At that point, I was not a very good glass maker yet, so I was still trying to find my way of how to express my ideas. But then after I graduated from college, I was trying to find a place to place myself as an artist. And I wasn't working so much in the glass studio. I was there off and on, but I didn't have so much access to the shop for myself. So this was the first piece that I made coming out of my undergraduate degree. And the reason I'm showing this piece is because it's become, I feel like, a turning point for a lot of the work that I make now. This is made from like basically 2 glass bubbles. And then I made the clothing on the piece, the gas mask. Obviously, you recognize that it's Ronald McDonald. And this piece is called Billion Served. I made this piece in 2002. So it was right when we were entering the kind of the second war with Iraq. And I was reading about who was really profiting from this war. And there was lots of corporations profiting from it. And for me, when I was thinking about this at the time, McDonald's was one of these kind of corporations that just became a symbol of the capitalistic society. It's not about McDonald's specifically, but they become a symbol for what America stands for. Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Disney, they all become something that, again, then shines their way through, becoming a symbol for what our capitalistic society stands for. Taking a leap forward a little bit here, I don't want to spend too much time on my historical work, but I wanted to show you a little bit of a development of myself as an artist. In 2009, I was chosen to do a CGCA residency at Wheaton Arts. And my proposal was to make the presidents in glass. And at the time, I thought I would do this for like really cool production piece. But once I started making these figures, I realized that I would do an installation of a piece that I would probably hold on to for the rest of my life and show around the world rather than selling them individually. And I started this series, The American Idols. I say I started it because I spent 3 years making these figures. I worked on the heads during the 6-week residency, but the next 3 years I spent making the bodies. And I exhibited this piece for the first time at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, and then again at the Delaware Center for Contemporary Arts. And this year, 2020, I was supposed to show this piece at Starworks in North Carolina, but I have yet to make Trump or Biden, so this would have been the moment to make Trump. But what this piece reflects on is the kind of personalities that the presidents had. One of the ideas was that they are human beings. Even though we kind of like idolize them and vilify them, they're still these guys who kind of do their thing, and sometimes they're wrong and sometimes they're right. And a lot of that kind of came into question during the time of George Bush. Like, it was a moment for me that I thought, you know, this guy, he's not like the devil, but he's just trying to do what he thinks is right. My opinions may have changed in the past year or so, or a couple of years, given the most recent president, but it was a question that I was asking, and I was thinking about how these guys came to light and how they made their decisions. So this work was kind of mocking them in a way, like making fun of them as human beings, but at the same time idolizing them, and at the same time creating this place where there was this very serious nature about it because of the scale of it and because of the amount of it, but at the same time also playing with their identities as human beings rather than as these symbols. And the idea of choosing the title of American Idols was important because at the time I was reading about that more people were taking like part in the American Idol voting than were in the American presidential voting. And it became again like this kind of symbol of the society of the spectacle. And it was a little bit of like a joke for me, but at the same time, very much a reality and something I was thinking about. So this piece went on for quite some time and is still something really important to the way that I developed the work. Just to give it an idea of what they are, the heads are in glass. So every one of these portraits was sculpted in glass, and then the bodies are made of this clothing covered in a resin. So I really made the clothing as well out of fabric or printing or painting on fabric and then covering them in an epoxy. But this is something that then became more important to my work as time went on. I'm moving on to this piece. This piece is called New Times Roman, and this is based on Michelangelo's Pieta. And I made this piece while I was in grad school and doing my MFA under John Miller at Illinois State University. So this is a huge piece for me. It was the first time I stepped outside of a bust and made like a life-size piece. So this is about 6 feet tall and almost 4 feet wide. And like in this piece, if you see the heads, the hands, the legs, the belly, that's all glass. And the rest of it is with this epoxy over fabric. But it was also the first time I was bringing this, or well, not the first time bringing the pop imagery in, but the first time I felt comfortable bringing this pop imagery in and mixing it, like kind of remixing it in a way that was very important or very reflective of contemporary society. When I completed that piece, I was around this time was the first time I started coming to Belgium, and I was spending a lot of time here during my master's degree. And I had gone to the museum in Brussels here, and I saw the Death of Marat. And that painting really grabbed me. And it was in September 11th, 2012, that there was the attack on Benghazi. And it was right around that time that I made this piece, which was this piece called Sale of the Death Man. Because it was also after the attack on Benghazi, there was this kind of idea that this attack had been caused by a video on YouTube called, I forget the name of the video, but anyway, it was not true. It was trying to point us towards this idea that we should blame Muslims. Basically, we've had this going on for a long time or the last 20 years or so anyway, since 2001. But this video was like one thing that was just very misleading, that was put out and became very public. And around the same time, Osama bin Laden was killed, which in some way like was weird, because as a human I celebrated it, but in another way I was also kind of like disgusted by myself for celebrating this. I know what he did, I know the atrocities that he committed, but at the same time, death for a death is not exactly the way that I want to believe in something as a human being. Like, I want to not have this feelings. I want to have empathy towards other people and not feel this way. So that was the idea behind this piece, that he was this kind of like a martyr in some ways, placed up, not for real, but like given to us to like, see, look, we caught him. We've done the good. So vote for us. And he was delivered in the silver shopping cart, which references the 40 pieces of silver that were Jesus was delivered on, and in a Walmart shopping cart, because again, this Walmart and McDonald's and Disney become surrogates for capitalism for me in my work. So it was a way of like presenting this idea. So the reflection of it on Death of Marat was important for that piece. This kind of sparked this whole idea, sparked a whole series of work that I'm still working on now, which is these pieces that reference really historical works that are very recognizable. So the Pieta, the New Times Roman, and then Sale of Death Men reference very recognizable pieces. And this also references these angels that you see in postcards, but that are from the Sistine Madonna from Raphael. And this piece was made after reading about the reaction of Bush to the Hurricane Katrina. And this piece was called No Child Left Behind. And it was this idea of glorifying or like using people who don't have as much say, using them as a way of generating a response from your voter, really. Like the excitement of like saying, oh, we're going to make this program where we will never leave children behind. It's going to be something that's going to be equalizing for all. But we know the reality of that No Child Left Behind program. We know how Katrina was dealt with. And it's great to show up for a photo op and be someone who's there, but it's not necessarily the way that, it's not really showing empathy or being a part of change. It's just for the photo op. So this piece was really about that idea. So those figures are glass, and then the box is metal covered in gold leaf with this trashes with epoxy resin. So it's these trash clouds, which actually you'll see in the exhibition now, that these ideas have tied through into my current work. That piece was from 2013, so it's an older works. Again, in the same series, this piece is called Stand Your Ground. And I made this piece after the shooting of Trayvon Martin. And the pose is referencing the dying Gaul, the dying gladiator. And I specifically chose the clothing and the posture, because the idea that like after he was killed, all of a sudden there was this like news media. It was, for me, it's like, I think it's the first step in a chain reaction that we've been living for the last 10 years. But it was like this point where he was being vilified. Like all of a sudden this 17-year-old kid was a criminal, even though he wasn't really necessarily a criminal. He was a 17-year-old kid. And the way that was twisted so deeply became the beginning of this piece, the idea of this piece, which also unfortunately became kind of the beginning of other works that fit into this kind of a series. What was important for me in this piece was that you would see this kind of strong figure that relates to the dying gladiator, but when you would come close to him, you would see some other imagery that relates to the civil rights movement. So the text and the on his shirt relates to civil rights, but the hoodie related to Trayvon Martin and became a symbol later for what still is like still a part of the civil rights movement that people are fighting for. But also you would see this look of fear that he must have had in his face. Like he wasn't trying to hurt somebody. It was, he was doing something, whatever, stupid, and someone killed him. It's not like he didn't deserve it and no one deserves it. That's the whole point. So I wanted to capture this also look of surprise and fear that he would have had. So that was important for me for this piece. And I'm also, when I think about this, one of the things that I think about with these pieces is a way of trying to come to terms. Like Aaron said earlier, that I think about a lot of this stuff a lot. And I do think about it a lot. And that's probably where a lot of it comes from, is it's, I'm trying to figure out how to come to terms with some of these things that happen day to day in all of our lives. And for some reason, it eats at me a lot. And it kind of sparks all of my work.
That was a powerful image, man. Incredible.
Thank you. This piece is actually, unfortunately, again, like I said, it follows in the series that was about, which is like really the shooting of young Black guys who shouldn't have been killed at all. But that this became like an ongoing suit or an ongoing problem, which we still, like I said, we're living in 2020. So it's not that it's something that's going to go away. It's just something that's becoming a reality. And maybe I know it's always been there. It's just something that's very much more present now with the way that we live in the media. But this piece was about Tamir Rice and shooting of Tamir Rice. And actually this was exhibited in one of the Habatat exhibitions, and has been shown around a little bit, but it's called When Reason Fails. But it was, again, capturing a look of shock or confusion on a figure who shouldn't be dying, trying to capture imagery that you would see also like in historical, like Catholic imagery. You see a lot of these martyrs who are dying, and they're kind of showing them their vulnerability. And that's what these pieces were about. So this piece is definitely heavily referencing religious imagery. You see he's got some of the Jesus poses and this crown of bullets. And it was something that goes on through a couple more, goes on in the series.
This was it part of the Peace show we had?
Yes, Peace. Yes, about the gun violence. I think it was around the same, it was 2016. So it was shortly after the Tamir Rice shooting, I believe. He was in 2013. I mean, it's now such a blur, which is really,
how it goes.
Terrible situation. Yeah. So shortly after moving to Europe, actually, I moved to Europe in 2013. I moved to Belgium and have been living here since. There was, still is, but there was the Syrian refugee crisis. And we know this image of Alan Kurdi. It was important, I think, wake up for the Western world about what was going on. But it also became this image that was everywhere, to the point that it's almost kind of lost its meaning. And that was something really shocking to me, how this image of a young boy, a young dead child on the beach, could almost lose it becomes, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it lost its humanity. It was important because it was like something we recognized. It was iconic, but it wasn't this boy, Alan Kurdi. We weren't thinking about him as a person. We weren't thinking about the terror that he went through, and how awful the situation is and was. So this piece is called Endless Night, and it was important for me personally when I was making this piece, when I was making these shoes. It's a strange point, but it was that I was really thinking about it, these tiny little kid shoes, and how terrifying it must have been. And I was working with the people on this piece, a group of people on the piece. And when we were putting this piece together, it got really quiet. It was just very like serene, or almost not depressing necessarily, but like reflective. And one of the things was that it just became very human for some reason. In the making of the piece, it humanized everything that was there in that iconic image. And that was one of the things I hoped to accomplish with this piece, was that it was about more than just an image. It was about feeling it. So this piece is really made to be life size, and you have to crouch down to look at it to see the repetition of it. So not to like hit you with a hard image, but to hit with a kind of a real image or a reality of a situation. But it was the thoughts that I was having about this piece was that how terrible it must have been for this father and child to have been crossing an ocean and losing control and being washed around in the waves in the middle of the night, and how terrifying it must have been. And that it was the endless night. That was the kind of basis for the piece.
Hey, John, we kind of lost your full screen. Can you put back in full screen? Looks like you're not in the full screen mode right now for some reason.
If I go to full screen, it kind of kicks me out.
Then keep it like this. It's good.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So moving on, I try to not only there's a lot of heavy subject matter in my work, but I also try to sometimes find the good or like the humor in situations. So this piece was also made for the Habatat International Invitational. This was called Loathing and Fear. And this was this guy kind of hiding in a wall. And I made this piece shortly after, I can't remember his last name, but Sean, he was the press secretary for Trump in the first year that Trump was in office. And they kind of were like, the press was trying to get his attention. And there was a photo of him hiding in the bushes. And this was kind of the inspiration for this piece. So he's kind of hiding behind this wall that he's walled himself into almost like a little turret that he's hiding himself and peering out of, but hidden in this wall. So it's again like a little bit lighthearted, more so, but still touching on the situation. It was kind of surreal and evolving in the U.S. at the time. But I wanted to show the look of fear, this kind of, terrified white guy, older white guy looking out at the world from his little castle that he's walled himself into. So it was a piece in fun.
Somebody mentioned in the chat, it's Spicer.
Yeah, Spicer, Sean Spicer. Yes, that's his name. Thank you. It was making me a little bit crazy. Again, following in from the When Reason Fails and Stand Your Ground, this piece was made after the shooting of Philando Castile. So this piece was called Protect and Serve. And it was, again, in this series of work, this unfortunate series of work that has continued. Of this piece was a shooting of an legally armed black guy in a car by the police when his kid and wife were in the car with him. Pretty terrible situation, and still existing. So yeah, this piece was made as the reflection on that. One of the things I've pulled into these pieces is like images referencing Andy Warhol a little bit, but like with this repeated images in the boxer shorts. So it's supposed to be something that's covered and it's covered up, but is becoming uncovered in the pieces. And in all of these things, there's in all of these pieces, there's different images references. In this piece specifically, it's the images are of cops that have killed these guys. So they're on the part that's supposed to be covered, but is becoming uncovered. Actually, in the piece in the show now, there's Crying with Silent Lips. There's boxer shorts with images of kids who died in U.S. custody at the border control. So this is something that like I've used throughout the pieces. It becomes kind of I want to say it's like not a signature, but like a part of the vocabulary that you can kind of discern through what's happening in the work. But yeah, what was important again in this piece was to show the vulnerability of the figure and to show that there was no threatening situation other than the color of his skin. That was the reason that this happened, unfortunately, but it was the reason for the shootings. So yeah, I can be somewhat opinionated sometimes. Moving on, this piece, this sculpture I made after the shooting in the Newtown shooting. It was called Back to School. And the idea of this piece was initially that it would be this young boy in a room that you would kind of discover had been shot. But the shooting in Newtown happened in 2012, and this piece was made in 2000. I made the first iteration of the piece in 2012, and this exhibition took place in Poland in 2017. And at that point, there had been 151 mass shootings since Newtown, and it didn't seem that it made sense to make him isolated. So I built a infinity room to show that this was an ongoing situation. So you would come in and be hit by this repeating image of this young boy who's dying from a wound of some sort. The wound is referencing the Doubting Thomas. Again, Doubting Thomas is an important alliteration or important analogy, because it's like people doubting that guns cause violence. I'm not saying that guns are the only reason they're causing violence, of course not, but it's something that I do believe that that people in schools, teachers should not have to be armed in order to protect students. There has to be somewhere a fine line of control in some way, not necessarily total control, but that there is a balance. So yeah, you can see he has a look again of shock and fear in his face. In this same exhibition, which was called A Still Life, there was a piece. This piece was made again in this body of work that deals with immigration. This is called Wretched Refused, and the titles of all these works come from the poem the New Colossus. It was written about the Statue of Liberty. So this piece and a couple other pieces that I'll talk about later are referencing that in its titling. But this piece was about the refugee crisis here, specifically in Europe, but again, reflecting on it in my own situation as an immigrant, and trying to understand. One of the things that I've felt as an immigrant living somewhere, I've had it pretty easy in a lot of ways, because I'm, an American, middle-class white guy moving to a new country by choice, and it's been difficult. So I can't imagine how it could be for somebody who didn't have the choice, comes from a country that maybe is war-torn and is fleeing for their lives. It's a very different and difficult situation. That piece was reflecting on that, and it also was taken. The reference of the piece was from The Little Dancer by Degas. So you see this strength and defiance in the girl. A series of work that I've also been working on is called the Mickey Martyr series, and these pieces all referencing Catholic martyrs. The idea behind the piece was that sometimes we have this idea that again, Islam is violence because there's martyrs, but in history, in Catholicism, there's also this imagery of martyrdom, and it was part of the history of the religion. So it's about questioning our beliefs and our ethics when it comes in terms of looking at the other and trying to understand, or trying to maybe not understand, but personally trying to understand, but how the world doesn't understand them, but it points the finger. So it was a little bit like tongue-in-cheek because it's Mickey Mouse, so it's nice imagery to use. And then making him a martyr. And in every one of these poses, he's referencing a Catholic martyr specifically. Some of them are gruesome, but if you've ever been to a Catholic church and seen some of the stained glass windows, they're also often quite gruesome. These pieces, one of the pieces was also for the Pop Lock show, as was this one. And this piece is called Searching for Sleepy. Again, this was about my own identity crisis living in Europe. My nickname from undergrad, my first or second year of undergrad, given to me by Shay Rhodes and Jess Julius, was Sleepy, because I used to work at night the night shift at UPS and then go to school during the day, and I was a narcoleptic pretty much all the time. And I've somehow over the last 20 years never been able to shake that nickname, so I've now just embraced it. So Sleepy is again a surrogate for my own persona, I guess. And in this image, he's just kind of lost and searching, and that was the idea, to try to find that you would catch this look of confusion and exhaustion trying to find out who you are.
Hey, John, I got a question for you from the audience. How on average size? What size are the Mickey Martyr pieces when you have the?
About 50 centimeters, so about like a foot and a half tall by 10 centimeter, 10 inches around, I guess, give or take.
Thank you.
They're, yeah, between 50 and 60, 65 centimeters. I have to think of in feet, but I think about a foot and a half to 40 inches, maybe. No, 30 inches.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm off on the inches, but centimeters I'm sure of. I also wanted to bring this and explain these Mickey Moris, and because they are images that have grown into this kind of a character as well. And you'll see these if you go to the NGG site. You'll see these pieces are the carved pieces in the exhibition. But the idea of this Mickey Mori to become this figure or this character who represents the kind of like the death of our ideas of capitalism, the ups and the downs. Like living in Europe and living in a very socialist country right now, or in a very socialist country, I sometimes long for some of the ideas of capitalism, which is funny because when I lived in the States, I was always going against it and really trying to find a way to undermine it in some ways. And now I maybe see it differently because I've lived in a few different places now. But like the things that I see, there's these ideals that exist in capitalism that have been been destroyed or overtaken in a lot of ways. But the same thing exists for like socialism and even in social democracies. So in the end, there's no real perfect way of existing in society. It's all a way of like negotiating between different belief structures. So these pieces are a kind of a play on that. They're like based off of the Memento Mori, which is remember you always die. And if we know that, the idea of Mickey Mori is like remember that Mickey will someday die. And the reason I chose Mickey is because he is the kind of like epitome of the idea of like ownership, because it was a creation of Walt Disney that then became owned by this corporation that will never die. And for years and years and years, it's become one of the thing that like one of the icons that can't be owned because of copyright issues, even though it should have been out of copyright many, many times. It's been one of the things that's changed the copyright laws in the US. So I thought it was like a funny way of emphasizing this idea that someday something will come to an end, even if it goes on for a long time. So this is a character that's kind of grown to exist in my work in different ways. And these pieces are relatively small in comparison. They're like 25 centimeters around, and they're hot sculpted solid glass. They're some of my few only glass pieces. So I don't do a lot of only glass pieces, but these are part of this series of only glass work and made purely here in Belgium. I put these images in to show some of the scale of the work that I've been showing. So this exhibition was in the Glass Museum in Denmark, in Habatat. And here you see people in reference or in the show, so you can get an idea of the size of the pieces. And this is the way that I visualize the work often. You saw in the walkthrough earlier that it comes as one big world that you exist in. It's not about each individual piece. It's about this whole collective of images that grow on you, and each one of them speaks in a different way. Each one of them talks about a different thing, but they all talk about the same thing at the same time. You see in the background, this is these images that were on the wall in the show here. These were printed on fabric, but the ones that are done here were printed on glass. So it was the first time I'm doing this digitally like collage on glass. And it was the first time to see these images like this, and they really bring another layer of the story to these pieces. But these figures are life size. That's the idea of them, that you walk around them and you relate to them because they relate to you. I think it's important as a viewer, but as an artist, that you're able to relate, to connect with them visually and physically in order to really feel what they're feeling or have empathy towards the situation. And that's the idea in most of these pieces, is to talk about a specific situation that I'm trying to understand and empathize with. I wanted to show the digital images of the windows, because these are, again, like I said, I go to these serious topics, and then I try to also find like a lighthearted expression of them as well. These pieces were also done in collaboration with Marta Bergiak. She did a lot of the actual digital collage, and I put together the images, and then she finalized them in order to make them look very coherent. But this piece is called Adam and Steve, and it's so lightheartedly in reference of the cake makers in the US who refused to give cakes to gay couples, which seemed like, I guess it's strange after reading about it after moving to Europe, and it seems like so surreal to me that that would even be a topic of discussion, but it is. So this is a lighthearted kind of poking fun at that, but bringing to a serious issue. Hopefully the people that see it, laugh at it, who don't agree with, giving cakes to gay couples, might rethink, well, that's a ridiculous idea. Although I don't think it will happen, but hope so. This piece is called When a Butterfly Flaps Its Wings. And it's about, I talked about the destruction of ideals. And when I say ideals, I mean like a fantasy, an idea of a fantasy that you believe, or something that exists beyond reality and kind of hyper exists. So the image there is the Berlin Wall, but the image in the background here is Ghent. And it's a play on this thing. When I moved to Belgium, I thought I was moving again to like a haven of existence. And when I've lived here for a while, it's just like anywhere else. You have good things and bad things. So it was important for me that was being destroyed in some ways, maybe a little bit excessively with the atomic bomb, but like this idea was being destroyed and reflected on. And the same with the Berlin Wall. It was something that the communism existed in a way and then became worse than it was meant to be. I will go through these a little bit more quickly just so we keep on a good time pace here. This piece is called Our Lady of Fatima. It's again a play on Catholic imagery, but it's all images of contemporary society or moments of society, but like remixing them with historical paintings. All of these photographs of these, like the figures, were taken from museums that I've visited in Wrocław in Poland, in Antwerp in Belgium, in Brussels, and different places when I've traveled around and taken cell phone shots, and then manipulated in a digital fashion. This piece is called Keep It in the Family. It was an image of two sisters, two royal sisters. So it was a bit of a play on the idea of royalty as well, pushing buttons there when I can. And this piece is called Dreaming Of. Again, reflection on destruction of a kind of a fantasy of a world that exists, that we believe exists, but we know doesn't, though we long for it and are trying to find it. This piece is called Prey, P-R-E-Y. I'm not going to give too much. I think you can probably figure out what it's about. This is The Wrath of the Maria. It's, again, an image reflecting on destruction of ideas, or this fantasy, the breakdown of a fantasy, the wholesome family, the history, the rich history, the royalty, capitalism. And this piece is called Don't Be Afraid. So we can see he's holding a big chunk of meat while bringing all of the animals together, cute little Disney animals. But it's St. Francis. And if we know, St. Francis was like the patron of the animals, patron saint of animals, but also, it was supposed to say like, don't trust what the hand that feeds you. It's a little bit of a play again into this idea. Moving into the most recent work now. This early in 2020, just before really Corona struck, I was at Pittsburgh Glass Center for an exhibition that was about immigration. And at the moment, the title of the show is lost to me. But the show is called The United, and it was about a group of people who are either immigrants or are making work about immigration. And this piece was made for this show. It's called Huddled Mess. And the figure Huddled Mess comes from the poem, The New Colossus, again, about the Statue of Liberty. It's about huddled masses. Give me your huddled masses. But the huddled mess is this kind of collective idea of people who are welcomed but not welcomed. So the pose of the figure and this kind of a castle collapsing is based on the wreck of the Raft of Medusa, the painting by Girault. I'm losing the name now, but by the French painter, who you've seen this painting a million times. But the idea was that it was the sinking of the ship, and the ship that is sinking in this piece is again this kind of like Disney princess castle. So it's breaking down and falling apart, and this figure is in some ways triumphing. So if you've seen the painting, you know that there's like a lot of figures in this painting starving and dying, but they see on the horizon a ship. So it's about this moment of hope while also being in this terrible situation. And that's something I'm trying to find, is that like there's always a moment of light, a moment of hope. So even when things are bad, there's still something good. So in this piece, it's made from a bunch of materials, but the body parts again are glass. There's fabric, and there's this foam and acrylic parts in it. But there's details of these photos were shot by Nathan Schulis at the Pittsburgh Glass Center during the exhibition. So you can see some of the details of the figure. The figure's life-sized. And when you walk up to it, you get to look into her. You can see into her eyes, which was important for me, that you would have this moment of recognition with the figure and understanding. Now I move into, I don't have all of the works from the show here because most of them are on the website. I didn't want to go into the same, to go over everything, but I wanted to show the pieces that were made before the show that really impacted the direction of the show. And this piece was showed during the video. It's called When You Wish. It was also made for the exhibition in Denmark. And it's intentionally like referencing like a wall bust that you see in the churches a lot of the saints. But this girl, I've lost her name, was based on a real person. She was the sister of a young boy who was shot by the police in Texas. He was 12 years old and driving away. They were driving a car away from a party, and the police shot in the back window and ended up killing the young boy. And the sister was who this was based on, and it's making me crazy that I don't remember the name, but
Amir Rice is the boy?
No, this was afterwards. It was in 2016. But the story was that when what struck me was when they asked me how she remembers her, the only thing she remembered about her brother was this moment that he was being shot by the police. And that was what it hit me. It had a big impact on me. And I thought about a way of like, trying to bring this image, bring her to life and bring this idea to life. So that was the genesis for the piece. And in the piece, she's trying to offer something, but isn't offering, it's a little bit like she's offering hope, like someday things will change, but it's a terrible situation. But in the same way, the idea was to play with the perception of individuals seeing her. So this piece was on display in Denmark, and she has her hand out here. And if you know, when you're a kid, you have these like little wishes that you would blow away, the dandelions. It was something that would exist there. It doesn't, but that was the point, was that she would be bringing it up to blow it away. But at the same time, people thought she was begging, so they were putting change in her hand. So it was about this idea of how you perceive somebody when you're not sure what the situation is. So immediately going to this maybe negative perception of somebody rather than, and then seeing it in a different light.
Tyree King?
Yes. And he was shot by the police in Texas.
Right. BB gun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And this is one of the other sculptures in the exhibition. This is the piece that I did together with Susan Taylor Glasgow. She came out to Ghent in 2018. and we made this piece together. Susan did the slumped and fused glass parts, and I did the figure, and we developed this kind of a chandelier together based on the one of the different elements of the cathedral in Ghent, which is where the Ghent altarpiece is housed. This piece is called Searching for the Dark, and it was, again, this idea of immigration, like, and specifically about crossing. We were talking about the refugee crisis and crossing the ocean or the sea, and how you need this like beacon of light. And again, it played off of the idea of the Statue of Liberty. So we made this beacon that would be leading the way, and that was the idea of the piece, to be this moment of hope, this moment of travel, to pull through, that you had something to follow. So it's a little angel guiding the way, with the sun reflecting on it. So you see the pieces here, the stump pieces, the clouds were done by Susan, and actually the piece together was very perceived by the two of us. And she brought these really cool little diamonds as well that we ended up turning into these raindrops that when the light hits them just right, they glow like just a moment of sunshine through the rain clouds. And the idea of this little lantern was that it was this tidal wave of that he was controlling the waves and helping to guide through the sea. So there's some details of this piece. So this hangs like a chandelier here, which is why it's shot in an odd way, like from down below, because it's above. But Susan did these really beautiful fused slumpings and elements for this piece. And then I put in some overalls of the show, so you can see the way that the pieces talk around with each other. So in this, you have the larger piece on the left, which is called Crying with Silent Lips. And in the middle, Pray for the Sinners, and the Mickey Mori pieces. So these pieces kind of relate to each other. So it creates a flow of direction throughout the exhibition and the work. And the piece in the corner with the horses is based on the Palace of Versailles, the Fountain of Apollo, and about this fantasy emerging from the ground there. So that was the point of this piece, and these crumbling bricks, again referencing the princess, the castle, the Disney princess castles. And here you see the digital images on the wall, so you can get a feel of what they look like in person rather than just in the image, and the scale of the Mickey Mori Travelor. So when Aaron asked me to do the show, I thought, since I don't have a place to show it, I may as well build a little gallery in my studio. So that was the idea behind putting this work together. I was lucky that we have this space, which we actually got just before the pandemic struck, and we had a lot of time here to be able to build on this.
Are you inviting people to come see this show live anytime soon?
Yes. Well, yes and no. People can come visit by appointment. We're not doing like a real opening because it's pretty not allowed here. So like, just if people want to come see it, they can. But we can't do an in-person invite, you know. So yeah, if anybody is in Europe and is interested, send me a message and come on and see it. I can schedule a time, but it's not really.
We call that by appointment only. That's what we call that,
essentially,
in this day and age, which is great. Great. Well, tell us a little bit about the video you're posting up soon too, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us.
Yes. So the presentation is finished. So if you want, I can switch back. You can take the screen back over. At 8:30 goes live the making the head for Pray for the Sinners, actually the one just behind Aaron right now, which is perfect. I made a video of the making of this head. It's a 5-hour video edited down to about an hour. So you can see, the process if you're interested. It goes live on my YouTube channel. I think Aaron shared the link, or if he's not, it's on the site, the NGG site.
Right. And, so here's John's page right here. If you go to Not Grandma's Glass and click on View Exhibition right here, it'll take you right to John's exhibition. And this is the great part about this is that I'm not telling them how to create their own experience. They're creating their own. And as you can see, this is the link, and it will be ready in 23 minutes, it looks like, which is fantastic. So check it out. John and I will be discussing, what the works are available for sale. He mentioned that some of the pieces are part of his collection, especially the presidents. So if there's something that catches your eye, just give me a call. And I'm really honored to have you in this talk today, John. I learned a lot. I must admit, I feel emotionally different from the start of the talk to the end. And that is a great response to have getting through one of these talks. Some of the stuff he talked about, I had a general idea. Some I did not at all, which goes to show my little bubble. So, but with kids and dealing with the world today, personally, it's some powerful stuff, man. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope everybody. I enjoyed is maybe not the right word.
Experienced.
Yes.
Experienced your talk. And if anybody has any questions, this would be the time to unmute yourself. This is very informal at the end here, but please do get the word out for John's show. Get the word out for Not Grandma's Glass. Share with your friends and people that really, really do care about art in the world and feeling something. There's artists out there that are pushing the medium in such amazing ways to really, touch the viewer. And John is definitely one of them. And we're honored to have you, man.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. This talk will be shared on YouTube. For those who missed it, you can check it out later. We posted on Not Grandma's Glass. We posted on our YouTube channel, Habatat Now. We advise you to share it. Check out John's video of him making the actual head of the piece behind me. I'll be scrolling into that after this talk and getting an idea to see how John actually works. But this was great, simply great. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Round of applause for John. I appreciate all you do, and I look forward to seeing where you go next.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. Really, it's appreciated.
Really enjoyed seeing it, John. It's great.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate you for tuning in, really.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you all for joining again. Have a great Saturday.
And Aaron.
Yes.
Enjoy your time off, and
yes.
best to Sarah on the forthcoming birth of your baby.
Right. Just so you know, this will be our last Zoom for the month. My wife's giving birth to a baby boy on April 8th. So enjoy your next few weekends. I'll be doing a talk the 23rd for the ACG talking about our Glass 49 exhibition that's opening up in May. But you'll probably get some stuff in your email by then. If you're not on our email list to catch these, just go to habatat.com and just sign up for our mailing list. You get to be part of everything we do. And we're grateful to have you share what we all love and believe in. So that wraps it up. Have a good holiday. Have a good weekend. Have a great Easter. Have great holidays. And if you need anything, give me a call anytime soon. Someone else asked a question. Mark, do you have a question you want to ask? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask if you want before we go.
Yeah, Mark.
I just wanted to ask John to talk a little bit about the evolution of his style. Having worked with you, there's a lot of life in your pieces, but I feel like you've really come upon your own style, your own format, a little bit away from realism. But yeah, I shouldn't talk about it. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I guess when I was starting, I was really trying to figure out how to blow glass, basically, and I had these ideas, and I was trying to just find my own voice of doing it. And over the years, like, I guess about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years after starting working with glass, I saw a video from Pinot, and then I, which is really strange now to say, like, I saw this video from Pinot on a videotape, essentially. And the professor that I was working with had studied with him, so he showed us some basic sculpting techniques. And then I got to take a class with the Del brothers, and actually worked a lot with James Lebold, who's here in this talk as well, and started like experimenting a lot of different ways with different sculpting techniques. And at some point, I was trying to push the idea of realism. And as I've gotten better with it, and over the years, like the presidents helped. President's project helped a lot because I made 50 heads in a row, or whatever, 44 heads in a row in a short amount of time. But I was able to kind of find this like place that I was comfortable with. That, like, I don't want it to be hyper real, because hyper realism for me is a little bit too real, and it loses emotion. It becomes something that's almost fake. Like if you see a John Andrea sculpture, they look real, they can almost touch them, but you know that they're not real, which makes them almost dead. So one of the things that I try to find is like this life like something that's just on the edge of realism, because that's where I feel like they feel the most alive, rather than too real. I don't know if that makes sense, but they're like lifelike but not perfect. And it's been something I've been developing for a long time, and trying to find the feel that, like, when you see a Bernini sculpture, those are way more lifelike, even though they're carved marble, than, for instance, like a Dwayne Hansen, because they're so real that they almost become fake. For me, even though they're spectacular, I love them, but it's different feeling, and I'm aiming more for this feeling of realism rather than the absolute realism. So I hope that answers your question.
Gives us an idea of your talent and what your direction is, and that's great to have. Thank you for asking that question, Mark. Again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, John, for being here, and I look forward to seeing you all face to face, hopefully very soon. Be well. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Aaron.
Bye, John.